Amanda Knox is mobbed outside a court in Italy.
You want to say something to Italian people?
Io non sono Foxy Knoxy, io sono Amanda Knox. E non ho calunniato, non ho ucciso.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello, Peaches and Scouts, and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. There's a lot going on about disinformation on the one case, and in the UK. Does authenticity matter to you? Well, if it does, you're at the right channel. Now, in terms of authenticity, is Amanda Knox authentic? Is what she said about Patrick Lumumba authentic? Did she accuse him legitimately or falsely? And so the question actually isn't whether Knox slandered her former boss at Le Chic. That's where she once worked in Perugia. His name was Patrick Lumumba. The question is whether she did so under duress. So let me just be clear. Accusing him of murder, accusing him of being at the scene, suggesting he was there, all of that is slander, right? There's no question about that. The question is whether she did that under duress, right? Was she coerced? Was she pressured? Was she compromised? Was she, all of those things? So again, just to reiterate, accusing someone of murder or implicating them, which is what she did repeatedly to Lumumba, she didn't do it just once. That is slander. Now, Knox did seem to be aware of a potential loophole in her handwritten letter. Like, based on what she said in her letter, she seemed to be aware of a kind of a loophole, kind of a off-ramp, so that if she was implicating Lumumba, she could nevertheless say, well, I'm very doubtful of the verity of the statements because they were made under the pressure of stress, shock, and extreme exhaustion. So if you think about it, it's kind of like having your bread buttered on both sides. I'm gonna accuse someone of something, but I'm also going to say, well, although I'm this is what I think I saw, I'm doubtful about it, right? And, what she doesn't seem to mention here, although it is a question with legal merit, is whether a translator was present, whether she misunderstood anything, given the very real situation that she was an English-speaking American in Italy, and there clearly were potential communication issues. And the answer is that a translator was present eventually, but at a late-ish stage of the questioning, which then became a kind of interrogation. So, according to the Associated Press, Amanda Knox's handwritten memo at the center of her latest retrial for falsely accusing a Congolese bar owner, that's Patrick Lumumba, in the 2007 murder that happened around about just after Halloween, late October, early November, of a British housemate, Meredith Kircher, contained enough elements for Knox to be reconvicted of slander. That was in June, and that is what an Italian appeals court said on Friday. These are the words from that statement from the appellate court, and this is from a 35-page document. The manuscript was written spontaneously and freely, as the accused confirmed in the course of her examination. The court said that the memo contained the objective details of the crime of slander. Knox wrote that she had been pressured and told that she faced 30 years in prison while being questioned overnight, and this is the crucial aspect, but then went on to repeat elements of her accusation against Lumumba, underlining, "These things seem unreal to me, like a dream, and I'm unsure if they are real things that happened or just dreams in my mind." And that dreams in my mind is made to try to answer the questions in my head and the questions I'm being asked. Now, I think what is really pertinent here is all of us can be confused, especially when we're exhausted, but that confusion tends to dissipate, that fog tends to lift, that uncertainty tends to fizzle away over time. And so I think the fact that Knox essentially doubled down in this letter, which she chose to write, no one asked her to write it, she basically just took it upon herself to write this letter, that basically sealed her fate. Now, if the court had found otherwise, if the court had found that she was falsely convicted of slander, Knox could theoretically have claimed, she would have been the benefactor of an incredible windfall. She could have claimed compensation for wrongful imprisonment, I think 3 years worth. She could potentially have won millions in compensation. Instead, Knox, who wants to clear her name, Knox, who repeatedly says that she's innocent, well, she's technically guilty of slander, of falsely accusing someone of murder. And so one can't actually technically say that Amanda Knox is completely innocent in this case, just in terms of what the law has said. Does that make sense? Now, I'm going to take this a little bit further. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. I'm going to be following up this analysis with some fascinating statement analysis. If you're interested in the Amanda Knox case, you're not going to want to miss that. So look out for that. That'll be coming up in the next couple of days, so look out for that. If you're finding my coverage of this case worthwhile, bear in mind I've written 6 books, 2 trilogies on the Amanda Knox case. If you're finding it worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's continue. Now, it is quite interesting how few media, mainstream media are actually covering this aspect. I think it's quite big news. But I'll touch on that a little bit later on, which news are touching on it and which aren't. But one does have to wonder, is Patrick Lumumba going to file some sort of motion? Is Knox going to appeal? She said she would appeal. Is she going to appeal, and what are the results of that going to be? I mean, who knows, she might win that. Can I just say, it's absolutely fascinating, the silence of the American media on Amanda Knox right now. The US media weren't afraid to hold court with her when she did her book tour and to promote one self-justifying documentary after another, including the one that's on Netflix. But when a legal narrative emerges that doesn't quite fit with the innocent exoneree, they simply don't cover it. Google Amanda Knox right now and you'll only see, besides what the Associated Press said, you'll just see obscure publications covering this story. The Winnipeg Free Press, Ireland Live, WRB News, the Somerset Country Gazette, that's from the UK. I find that pretty damn disingenuous. Incidentally, in April, long before the outcome in June, I covered Knox's email, not the letter, her email explaining her actions in detail in a 4-part mini-series on Amanda Knox. You might want to have a look at that. One aspect that also bears further scrutiny is Knox's aptitude in Italian at the time she was being questioned. She was in a relationship with an Italian. He had a pretty poor grasp of English. There's actually audio intercepts from the Questura, from the police station, where one can actually hear Knox and Solicitor discussing the case. Let me know if you'd like some analysis on that. Now, another interesting question. On the night Meredith was murdered, why did Knox and Solicitor, both turn their phones off? Have you ever thought about that? Besides their explanation, what could be another explanation for that? Anyway, I have some thoughts on that as well. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys next time.